What's up, Life Stoked Nation? I am super excited today to introduce you to Dylan Sneed and have him share a little bit about his story of going from working for a dream-crushing mega corporation to now a world-traveling musician who is writing and playing his own music. It's his biggest passion, and that is so what we're about here at Life Stoked. And this is just chock full of awesome information, awesome things, and you get to kind of peek behind the curtain and see how Dylan did it, some of the struggles that he had while he was going through that, and some of the biggest lessons that he's learned. And I know that is applicable to what all of us are trying to do here as a part of Life Stoked Nation. So I'm super excited to introduce you to Dylan Sneed. So let's get to it. Well, hey everybody, I'm here with Dylan Sneed, and I'm gonna give Dylan. I'm gonna start out with a small talk test. Let him tell you about himself. So, real quick, Dylan, what is it that you do?
Well, I create stuff. I like to make stuff. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes it's an event or a concert series or something like that. But I like to be creative, and that's basically what I do in a nutshell.
Awesome. So you've got kind of not so much. It's just you, right? You don't have a band or anything. It's just kind of you out writing your own stuff and playing your own stuff and traveling around.
Right. When I tour. When I tour, it is primarily just me. I might do about 5 or fewer full band shows a year, just mainly for logistics reasons. And I occasionally sit in, play guitar for other groups. In the past, I've gone on tour with people as a guitarist, and but most of the time, if you see me out playing somewhere, it's usually me with an acoustic guitar singing songs.
And how long have you been doing that? Like the full time, just that's what you do thing.
My first foray into a full time music gig was 2002. I graduated college, and immediately my first job out of school was playing bass for a country band in Texas, because that's what we all do in Texas. In case you didn't know, like it's all dirt roads and we ride horses and play country music. But and so that's what I did, and it was a neat opportunity because I got to open a lot of the shows, and so I still got to play my material and get a lot of experience under my belt traveling around Texas, and then I got that experience of playing as kind of a hired gun, getting being a backup to another performer, and it's like it was kind of exercising 2 totally different parts of my brain. So it's probably since I've been out performing since about since high school, but I think since 2002 was really kind of when I started doing it full time.
I know you spent some time in corporate America, and that's actually one of my favorite parts of your story, is that you do have this awesome story of actually figuring out what your dream is and then actually going and doing it, and that's really rare. I got to read you this sentence from your bio on your website because I think it's awesome. It's in the third person, which makes it even awesomer. Over his short but painful tenure in the machine of corporate America, he learned many lessons, but one prevailed above the rest. This was not where he was supposed to spend the rest of his life. So tell me about corporate America and what it was like for you being trapped in the machine.
Yeah, it was. It's funny, I really believe in trying something before you start talking about it, like you know what it's like. But that was pretty much how I thought it was going to be. Like when I did the corporate America thing, it was it was kind of like Office Space, and I mean, it was kind of that vibe, and just um, uh, tons of red tape and endless, just a litany of acronyms that it's amazing, these acronyms, and using words like using like leverage like a verb, and things like that. So it I feel like it served its purpose, though, if nothing else than to give me kind of light a fire under me, or give me a little more impetus to do something else,
Yeah.
and it and I mean, in a practical sense, I got uh, the corporation had a lot of money, and they paid me more than fairly, and I got to be debt free and all that, and so that really helped once I made the transition to back to full-time music.
So you were doing the music thing, and then at some point, was it like, well, time to go get a big boy job, or what? How did you wind up in corporate America in the first place?
Well, it was. I feel like I sort of got duped a little bit. I had. Uh, I had been playing in the country band, and then doing my own gigs, and scraping by, making it work, but it was I mean, just by the skin of my teeth. But it still felt really cool, because I was like, man, that's all I do is music for a living. And then I came to a point after about a year of playing with that band that I felt like that had kind of run its course. Like I said, I got a lot of great experience just under my belt, just performing in front of people, playing with a band, that kind of thing. But my last guitar teacher, who I took from in Dallas, when I lived there, he told me that there were four ways that he evaluates a gig. It's money, experience, exposure, and fun. And those are the four factors that he uses in evaluating the value of a gig. And basically where I was at with the country gig was, it wasn't a lot of fun most of the time. I was getting more experience, but I was like, okay, I could use another experience. I was not really getting exposure for my music, and they weren't paying me that much. So at some point, you're just kind of like, well, it's time. It's probably time to move on. And so naturally, I went to Starbucks, and so I was a barista for a little while, and then through a connection with a friend, I got hooked up with like you said, like the big grown up job, and yeah, I guess I kind of got caught in that trap a little bit of just thinking, well, I guess this is the next step. Isn't this what you do? I've got my little piece of paper from college, and now don't I go and I sit in this office and I wear business casual, and and so that's, I think I did some of that, factored into it, for sure.
You mentioned something that I think is super key and really awesome part of your journey that I didn't know about. While you were working the corporate gig, you actually paid off all your debt, and you used that kind of, I mean, that's awesome. So you built, while you were in that job, you obviously weren't doing what you loved or any of that stuff by a long shot, but obviously that was a huge part of what you're able to do today, just being able to build that foundation for you. I think that's awesome, because I think a lot of people who are out there in their job, that it can feel like you're just like wasting time or trapped or something, but there's a lot of stuff I think you can do to prepare yourself for the path when it is time to go and do that. So tell me about when you were just like, I'm done, like I'm going back to full-time music. Was it like Yeah,
It's
tell
a
me about
funny
that.
story. It's a funny story because um, well, I'll just, I had this journal that I actually had a journal that I kept at work. If that can tell you anything about like how dedicated I was to this job. I mean, I was the crappiest employee you can imagine. I mean, like there are stories, and I probably won't go into it here, but it was just I was awful, and I think and I knew that I was an awful employee, and so that and then you start getting that sort of, you know, that guilt kind of seeping into your head, like, oh gosh, I'm getting paid all this money, and I should really appreciate these guys for letting me stay in this cold gray office building in my cubicle, and like and it was just you know, and just confusion and guilt and all this stuff. And but I had this journal, and I remember one day, I think it was probably in December of '05, probably, and I I wrote down, and the entry was very short. I think it just said, by this time next year, I'm going to be in Nashville, and and you could have kind of, with Nashville, it was like a fill in the blank answer. Nashville wasn't important. Nashville's a great city, great place for music, but it really was like, I'm going to be not here, you know. And it was funny because looking back on that, when I wrote that, I had paid off my debt already. I had saved up a bunch of money. And I look back now, I'm like, what were you doing? Like saying 12 more months of this, you know? And then what happened was, a month later, the corporation I worked for bought another corporation because it wasn't big enough, you know, and so it like bought this other corporation, and it's funny because it actually has a history of getting sued. I mean, the U.S. government, like, even told, like, I don't want to name names, but you can maybe figure it out if you Google a little bit. It's like, guess what? You're a monopoly, so we're gonna chop you up into little companies, and it's like happening all over again. Anyway, so so when they merged or acquired the other company or whatever, I got this note, I got this letter in January saying that my position had been surplused. And I was like, huh? Like, again with these words, it's like, just talk to me. And like, so, and then when I finally figured out what that meant, I was so excited. I was like, I'm free. So basically, it's like, you know, I had taken sort of a step in my mind, you know, of thinking like, okay, I need to take some steps to get out of here, and then, you know, Providence, God, whatever you want to say, was like, how about this? And it was like, and so that's how I got out. Now I did have a choice. That you stuck around for about a month after that, and I think they said, like, you know, we can look for some other position within the company. You just have this job, or we can give you another job, and so I stuck around there and still got paid and whatever. But I was just booking shows for all these tours that I was going to be on, because and it was great. I felt like I felt like I could breathe. It was the best time I ever had at that job, because everybody knew. All my cards were on the table. They're like, there was no doubt in anyone's mind what I was doing. They're like, oh, maybe he'll take a position. No, like they knew that I was leaving. I was going to pursue music full time. I had put out a CD while I was working there, you know, and so some people knew that's what that was like my real identity, you know, and so that's basically what happened. I got I took a little step, just kind of internally, and then it's like I got some help, you know, and then off I went.
That's awesome. So you basically, as you left and kind of went back into full-time music, there was no doubt that's your new plan, and you're not looking for other jobs or anything else. This is the new thing, right?
Yeah, Deacon. When I was a senior in college, I I remember a time at a class. It was getting near graduation, and the guy went around the room and just asked us what our plans were, and everybody was like, "Oh, I got this internship at so and so, and I'm doing this or I'm doing here," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm probably just going to be playing music," and I said that in class. So I mean, I had known that for a while, and it had been, I mean, who knows how long that it had been growing. A lot of times these things that seem, I feel like that's what happens sometimes in life, is these things that, oh, this thing all of a sudden just happened. It's like, no, it didn't. It's been like since, I mean, you can get real philosophical about it. The dawn of time. It's like this leading up to this moment, it's like these things, like I don't feel like these things just happened, and I mean these things have been building up in me for a long time, and then it was just a way of uh, seeing them in action, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. So from all the stuff that I've read about successful people and the stuff that I experience kind of starting my own business and trying out things here and there, one of the keys that they always say over and over again is you have to start before you're ready. If you wait till you're ready to quit your job, or you wait till you're ready to get up in front of people and play music, then you're never really going to get there. You've been, obviously, this, like you just said, this is kind of a long journey for you, and you'd been doing it for a long time. It wasn't like you were at your desk and thinking, I'm going to play music. Like this was a bigger part of your life than the job that you were at in the first place. Is that something that you've ever felt like when you were leaving the job and going off to play shows? And did you feel like you were ready to go and do that stuff?
I think I did with I felt ready. I had a Yoda in my life at that time, or as a I one of my favorite books is by Paulo Coelho, a Brazilian author. He wrote this book called The Alchemist, and it's just it's a kind of a short book of a fable, basically, about following your dreams. And so that's another. I kind of had an alchemist in my life too, like somebody to kind of show me the way, and it was the guy that I was studying guitar with there for about 3 years in Dallas. I was working at my job, and then whenever I got laid off, I came to him and told him what I was going to do. And in fact, I should rewind a little bit. I remember we finished up a lesson one time, and he had asked me to play learn how to play something, and I played it, and we recorded it and everything. And I'm kind of packing up my guitar and all this, and it's late at night. I was like his last lesson of the day, and he says, and this guy just happened to be he was a man of faith, I guess you'd say, and but he didn't really beat you over the head with it. But he said to me, I wonder what you're going to do with music. And I noticed that he didn't say if you're going to do anything with music. He didn't say, and he's not a stupid guy. He chooses his words carefully. And he was like, I wonder what you're going to do with music. And he was like, and then he said something like, well, I just think it's kind of neat that God lets you get this good. And I was like, oh, and man, I had to. I left that lesson that night, and I kind of had to take a little drive for a while, and just look at the stars and kind of and really kind of take stock of where I was and what was I gonna do. And this is all before I got laid off and everything, and so once I got the proverbial pink slip or whatever, it's like I did feel ready. I agree with that statement, because there's plenty of other things that I'm trying, including this thing that we're going to talk about, this thing that I'm working on right now. I mean, there are things that yeah, I felt like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And but I found that to be true also, that you go for it, and it's almost a process of going through it prepares you for it's kind of bizarre because it's happening like simultaneously, but you can't be afraid. You cannot be afraid to fail, and you cannot be afraid to succeed. That is a big one. That is a big one for me. I think that might be bigger than the failure thing.
Really?
Absolutely, because I think a lot of people can relate to the fear of failure. Like, oh, what will they think of me? They're all going to laugh at me. I mean, just things like that. Just fear of what our fellow man is gonna say or do, or what our family might think. And but well, a lot of times you can kind of just get over that, And but I think but I think it's the fear of success that's kind of more. It's harder to notice sometimes in yourself, but it's there. It's something that I feel like I've dealt with, and continue to deal with, and and just this idea that, like, oh, I don't deserve this or something like that, and we could talk a long time about that, but I mean, there's that's wrapped up in all kinds of issues, I guess, but just basically like seeing yourself as someone, seeing it almost as like it's your only obligation in life is to just kind of like do what you do, to be yourself, for crying out loud. And that's another gist of of the book of The Alchemist. It's like that's one's only obligation in life, is to he calls it your personal legend, to live that out, and that every single person has something like that, some path, that they can choose to go on or not, and it's just better if you do, though. It just is.
I'm totally reading that book. That is awesome.
I read it every.
So I've got to ask, like, everything you just said right there super resonates with me, just as someone who's kind of starting a business and building Life Stoked and all that stuff. Man, those are battles that I fight all the time. I got to ask, what about the people around you, like your friends and family? Were there any people that were like, oh man, this Dylan thinks he's going to be a musician? Or did you have to deal with any of that negativity or anything like that? Or
I did, and I still do, and it's I think part of what, I guess, whatever we want to call success, or living out, living out your personal legend, or however you want to put it. I think part of that, how do I want to put it, is being deliberate, in a lot of what you do. Maybe not all of what you do. I don't know if that's possible, but really, but trying to be deliberate, and that means sometimes, I don't know, deliberately deleting a nasty email that you get from somebody that just like, I don't need that. There's nothing. It's like thinking of things not in terms of like good and bad, but of like, does this give life or not? And that's kind of a way that one of my friends here has talked about that, kind of about like morality and stuff, or ethics. But and I think there's some times where you're just hanging around somebody and you're like, this is not giving me any life, and in fact, this might be stealing life from this person's presence right now. but just because of where they are, you know, and it's not necessarily them. It's you know, they're not maybe they're just not on that path right now. But I think you have to be deliberate about that, you know, and you don't need to. I mean, it's not the answer is not surrounding yourself with yes men. I mean, look at the Charlotte Bobcats. It's like that's not the answer to that. But but you but surrounding yourself with people that love you, and care about you, and will because you can even give somebody constructive criticism in a way that is life-giving, I believe. And so that's something that I've had to deal with for ever since, because it's like, the thing is, most people are not doing this stuff, and you know that. I mean, that's, I think, what Life Stoked is kind of all about, is like that most people are not doing this. Most people are making choices kind of like what I did before, where I was like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to go and do this job now, and what, I guess I'm supposed to go find a girl and get married right now, or have a kid and whatever. And like, and that's nothing against getting married or having kids, but like, if you're making that decision out of like, because you just think it's the next thing to check off on your bucket list or whatever, it's like, I don't know. I would maybe re-examine that strategy, but it's and I don't know. So all that to say, like, you know, just surrounding yourself with people that are speaking life into you. That might sound a little.
No, totally get that.
You get that? Yeah.
Absolutely. So you just reminded me of something awesome. I was going to bring up two things from one of my favorite books. It's called Quitter by John Acuff. I don't know if you've read that one, but one thing you just reminded me of is he's kind of always been an author and written a bunch of stuff. And one of the things he talks about in his book Quitter is kind of dealing with haters and all that kind of stuff. And one of his sayings, his big takeaways that I always remember, kind of one of his mantras is, stop looking for vitamins in poison pills. And that's like, you know, so just to kind of wrap all that up, that's what I think of a lot when I hear that. Because, you know, you get the negative feedback and you're like, maybe they said, but my hair looked nice. Or you're like looking for something in there that you can take as a little victory.
That's cool.
So something else I wanted to mention from his stuff, because this resonates with me, because it's kind of always been a personal obstacle. I think a lot of people struggle with this. So in Quitter, John tells a story about when he was in 7th grade and he was throwing a birthday party, and he'd invited the whole class, and they were all supposed to come over to his house for this party. And he talks about during that day, he was just like this nervous, knotted mess, just waiting, like, what if nobody comes? You know, what if I've got all this stuff? I sent out cards to everybody and nobody shows up. And I totally know that feeling just from doing webinars and teaching courses and stuff like that. And I always tell my wife, Cameron, I was like, my biggest fear isn't that nobody comes, because I think I could handle that. My biggest fear is that one person comes.
That's funny.
But I mean, you must have a kind of I'm guessing you have to deal with this a lot, especially in the early days. So tell me a little bit about getting over that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of this stuff. Here's maybe something I want to try to dispel, is this idea of conquering this or that fear or whatever as some one-time event. You know, like that. Like, okay, I conquered my fear of you know, like if one person shows up to my seminar or whatever, and it's like, but the next time you do the seminar, and then that fear comes up again, then you're like, oh, I guess I didn't conquer it. It's like, well, come back. I mean, it's like it wants to it wants you to be afraid, you know, and you, and I feel like, oh my God, I feel like the stuff that the insecurities and things that I deal with, it's, they're still very similar to, I don't know, when I was like 16 or whatever, you know. I mean, just, and it's just, but I have more in my arsenal now to defend myself with, but it's like they keep coming, you know. And it's, the trick is, I guess, not to be discouraged when they come, you know. I mean, geez, I mean, this project that I'm working on right now, like with this fundraising project, you know, I'll go and like look at other people's projects and be like, oh my gosh, their video is so much better, or something, or like, and they like raised a lot more money than I did. Oh, and it's like, and I'll start comparing myself to them and all this, and it's like, and and so it's like I have to, yeah, it's just, it is a constant battle. I feel like I got way off track sort of with your question, but I don't even remember the, but
no, you're right on, right on.
That's been something that's helpful for me, that's been really helpful for me to realize that just because you encounter some fear in your business, you know, that you might have encountered before, and you're like, well, crap, I thought I already like dealt with that. And it's like, well, guess what? You're going to deal with it again, because it just, it's, I don't know. I just think they're persistent little buggers.
I love hearing that you're afraid, Dylan, and I'll tell you why. For me, seeing people who are doing really cool stuff, and like you said, I think one of the battles that we all fight is comparing ourselves to other people. It's so easy to sit here behind my computer and look at your Kickstarter page and your videos and listen to your music and think, man, like, how is this guy doing this? Like, he obviously conquered his fear. But so I think I take a lot of encouragement, and I hope everyone else does too, just from hearing people who are out there succeeding and doing stuff and moving their lives forward. Just hearing them say that, yeah, you know what? I still fight the same fears I did when I was 16. Kind of like when I was going through the get out of debt thing. I loved listening to Dave Ramsey and those people who had made it and talk about the really tough things that they struggled with. So you mentioned your campaign that you're raising some money for. I know you've got a big project that you're working on right now. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on with that.
Well, that really kind of ties in, I feel like, with that whole fear of success thing. It's basically this. A promoter in Nashville who works a lot with folk and acoustic radio wants to push my record, Texodus, which is my latest record, to 850 radio stations in the U.S., Canada, and Europe for 2 months, in May and June. That's how long her promotions go. But she wants to work with me. Why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because every time that she sends something to a radio station, to a music director, and she's putting her name on the line, and she's saying, like, look, I will vouch for this dude. Like, this is good, you know. And that's how her business works. That's the strength of her brand, you know. Is that, like, when mail comes in the door at these radio stations and they see a package and it's from this lady, they're like, oh, that's good. I'm going to open it and listen to it and probably play it, you know, as opposed to like, Dylan, who? You know, so it's kind of the difference between that. And so that's what has happened. Or that it's going to happen. It's kind of in the process. And so, but to do that, it's very expensive. And it just is. You can ask, if you go and ask any serious musician who has gone through a process like this, they will tell you it's darn expensive. And you got to take into account the fact that working with somebody like this is somebody who's invested maybe 15, 20 years of her life in building up her name, her contacts, her reputation with people all over the world, to where she can help people get a foot in the door. And so that is worth something. I mean, that's a lot of time that she's invested. So it does cost money it's expensive to work with her. You know, her time is valuable. And the fact that we're going to have to reprint some CDs, and then I don't even want to talk to you about the postage, but it's ridiculous. So it just all that added up together, and then Kickstarter and Amazon take out a little bit for their service. All that together, we're asking for $10,000, which is crazy because that's more than I asked for to make the dadgum record. And because we did a Kickstarter project to make the record, and it worked out and everything. But you can chalk that up to inexperience, you know, because I did not have a promotion plan set in place when I made this record. And what's been really cool is that I think I had kind of almost gotten to the point, especially probably in the last year or so, where I was just sort of like telling myself, okay, I think you need to move on. I think not from like doing music or whatever, but like move on from Texas, even though I feel like it's the best thing I've ever done. It's like the songs are the best that I've had on a record, and it sounds great. I think I listen to it today, and I still think it sounds awesome. And even though I felt that way, I was like, you know, it just better luck next time. That's kind of about where I was. And here comes this lady and says, and I mean, it's nothing short of like a resurrection, you know, because she's like, dude, like by and large, like nobody like if you look at such a small percentage of people in the U.S., for instance, have heard this record, you know, and she can start to change that for me. So that's what we're doing, and what that can end up doing is just basically like thrusting my career forward. It's really I think it's a story about you know, it's kind of like the rooting for the little guys, sort of. You know, I don't have a label, I don't have a manager. I mean, you're looking at the manager, booking agent, bus driver, caterer, everything, you know, and it's what I do. And there's a lot of us out there like that, but through avenues like Kickstarter and others, we have a chance to basically ask our fans if they want to be our label and act as that. And it doesn't take an enormous investment per person. You know, you could spend 25, 50, $100 and really like change, I mean, not just change my career, but kind of like be a part of changing like the music business. Mm-hmm. That sounds hyperbolic, but but that's really what's happening right now. I mean, labels are scrambling to find ways to compete with this stuff, you know, because a lot of us are just a lot of me and my fellow musicians are like, well, what are you offering us? You know, I just made an awesome record just because I asked my fans if they wanted to, and then they said, yeah, sure, I'll give you some, I'll buy one or whatever. And so it's a very empowering thing. It's an exciting time in music. You know, it's crazy too. I mean, with iTunes and everything like that. I mean, but it's very exciting.
Awesome. Sounds real similar to the last interview I did with a guy who just wrote his own book, and he skipped all the publishing, everything, just put it out for Kindle and audio, made his own audio book, and boom, he's done. So you said you were kind of planning on like, well, maybe it's time to move on from Texas album and do the next thing. And then you got hooked up with this promoter. Was that kind of like a serendipitous thing? Like, did she just walk out of the woods and say, "Are you Dylan Sneed?" And like,
you there? But like, I tell you what, it's like, what is it? I think it was like, it's like Woody Woody Allen, who said like 80% of life is showing up. And like, I mean, and an example of this, it's like there is there are a bunch of music conferences that happen, and it's just like a conference for any other industry, except maybe a lot more fun. I don't know, like a lot more banjos, and that's for sure. So, like, I had been going to this music conference that was based in Memphis. It was an international conference, and so people all around the world were coming, and they're all doing like sort of under the umbrella of folk, acoustic, Americana kind of music. And so it was a good place to hang out, if nothing else than to just meet other musicians that were doing the same thing I was, and who were really good and serious about it, because it costs a little money to go to the conference. You know, you have to sacrifice something to get there. And but it was so cool to go there and be like, wow, there are other crazy people like me who would just do this in a heartbeat, you know. And through some of those conferences, that's how I met the promoter. And yeah, she basically just introduced herself one day. I was eating, you know, like they were serving some food. Because when there is food, I eat it. Like that's like one thing I've seen on the road. But so I'm just eating, and she starts talking to me. And actually, the way she heard my music was, I sent her a copy of the record because I listened to a workshop that she put on about, is your CD radio ready? You know, because a lot of CDs, and I'm sure like your buddy the interview that did the book on Kindle and all this stuff, like, it was a great book, and it was and he took his time like getting it edited and all this stuff and all that. But sometimes people, because it's so easy these days to make that happen, it's like they don't go through those gatekeepers anymore of somebody to say like, dude, needs to be a comma there, or like, dude, you're way out of tune, or something. And so I was just curious, you know, what this, you know, experienced promoter thought about my record, and if it was like something that was radio ready. And so I sent it to her, and she listened to it, and calls me, and it's like, I love this. I was like, thanks. And she's like, so what did you do with this? Because she noticed it was put out in 2010, and I think I met her in the year after. And she was like, what have you done with this? And I was kind of like, oh, you know, I had toured a lot, and I even, you know, but I even got some shows in the Netherlands, and I played, you know, some in Europe, and but that was mainly what I did. I wasn't sending it to radio. I wasn't getting a lot of reviews for it, and so it was very slow going. I mean, you know, people like you and Cameron knew about it, but and you know, my mom, but it's like a very small crowd that was even aware of its existence, you know. And so that's when she first posed she was like, well, what if we did this, you know? And that's funny because she actually asked me back in 2011 about doing this, and I was like, oh, I was dragging my feet, and because chalk it up to maybe fear of success, like I was saying, you know. I was like, I seriously, like, as we talked and we got more serious about it, the thing that scared me the most, I would sit there and be like, oh crap, this might actually work.
Uh-oh.
You know? I don't know. It's like I would have to own up to it or something. But anyway, that's basically how we met. And it's a small world in when it comes to music. I mean, it's like everybody just kind of knows everybody. So
there was something really small in that kind of story that I absolutely love, and I think is so important for anybody who wants to do anything cool. So, and I've mentioned this before, but this is one of the things that I absolutely love about you and your story is that you do things, right? Like you well, I guess you didn't technically quit your job. They quit your job for you, but from then on, you did everything. You booked all your own shows. You went out, you played the music, you created this Texas CD, and then my favorite part of that story that you said. So now you've got this Kickstarter campaign to help you dramatically accelerate your career, working with this promoter, and that part, just so everybody hears this part clearly, all happened because Dylan sent her his CD. So she's this kind of like big, well-connected person who listens to all this stuff, and she could have. I know that probably wasn't an easy thing to do, to take your CD, something that you've worked so hard on, and send it to somebody like that who could just as easily just throw it on the floor or whatever. But I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it's just these. Oftentimes, it's these little acts of progress. You know, a little like just taking a step. I have this big, you can't see it from where I am, but I have this whiteboard up here with just all this, so much crap on there right now. And but right in the middle at the top, it says the next step. And then it has all these, I mean, there's a zillion projects that I'm thinking about right now. And so I have all the projects kind of listed, and it's just that next thing I need to do. It's just like, if it's like, call this dude, you know, or like look, you know, get a quote on like how much it costs to run sound for this thing, or like, I don't know, or like, you know, call that designer about something, or, you know, it's just, oftentimes it's just that little, that's what I want to focus on, you know, rather than like the whole mountain, you know, just that next step that you need to take.
That's a good point. So I'm super excited. I mean, if you're listening to this now and you go to dylansneed.com, it's going to take you right over to the Kickstarter page. I think I don't remember the date that ends, but I think there's a little over 2 weeks.
It ends Monday 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Monday the 11th, around about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm super excited about this. I'm super fired up. We've heard a lot about your journey and where you've been and all these kind of things that you've dealt with and kind of kept going and building your own story. And I'm excited because you're like right at the beginning of another one, right? Like this Kickstarter thing is going to get going, and you're going through I think the promotion thing was it May and June, did you say?
It's May and June, and that coincides with the next European tour. It's also in May and June. Awesome.
Well, I'm super excited about that, and absolutely go over to dylansneed.com, and again, I'll either take you to his Kickstarter campaign or right to his main website, but definitely go and check that out. And Dylan, we're excited to see what happens with your story next, because it's a great one.
Thanks, Deacon. I really appreciate the time, man.
How awesome is Dylan's story? I absolutely love it, because there are so many people out there. Like, how many Dylans out there do you think there are right now that are still in the cubicle, still just kind of coasting, unwilling to take that risk or kind of get out of their comfort zone and do those really difficult things that Dylan has done to move his career forward? And so I think it's a huge encouragement to me, and I hope you guys got some awesome lessons from it. One thing I wanted to point out that we didn't get a chance to talk about in the interview. So there's something that Dylan did that I think is really key to moving you forward, and I see people over and over again who are serious about what they're doing, who take it really seriously, do this same thing. And so I think it's important to call that out. You'll notice several times Dylan talked about paying good money to work with a coach, or he worked with someone who was giving him lessons, and now he's going on to work with this promoter, and that costs him money, right? People that are serious about getting better, and they want to get better, and they really want to move forward and accelerate at a faster rate, they're willing to pay that money. I talk to people all the time who that's kind of a sticking point for them, you know. Well, this is just a side hobby. I don't know if it's going somewhere. But if you really want it to go somewhere, please go find somebody who can help you. The acceleration that you get from working with them is unbelievable. It is totally worth it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And one more thing, through Dylan's Kickstarter project that he's raising money with right now is an awesome opportunity for us at Life Stoked Nation to be a part of Dylan's story and helping him reach that next level. So if you haven't been to dylansneed.com, that'll take you right over to his project page. You can learn about everything that he's doing there and everything he's got lined up for the next few months. And it's a lot of stuff that's going down. And I'm excited to be a part of it. And I'm excited for you guys to kind of get to look in and see somebody else who's doing these things, doing big things and moving their career forward. And so just head on over there, check him out, tell him we said hey, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, but if I climb this wall, I'm afraid that I might fall. Ooh, if I climb this wall around and